That was talking about the Yom. It's the Moshe of the Medrash, the bird describing Haman, explaining the Medrash in light of the Gemara in Brachos with Rabbi Akiva. So now another additional thing, it continues with respect to the Yom, the ocean. That comes in continuation of what we spoke earlier about creatures in the sea. The question is, this itself requires explanation. Why is it that creatures in the sea, when they separate from the place of their life force, they die immediately, whereas creatures on dry land can be separate from their source of life, meaning food and drink and so on, without feeling that they are cut off from the source of their life? By introduction first, would appear not understood. How is it possible that a Jew should enter a Jew's mind, a machshava zoda, that he can, a foreign thought, that he's able to endure, exist, even if he's not in a state of advekim Hashem alekechem? How could a Jew entertain such a thought that he could exist independently of Hashem? In order that Yidden should be in a situation of Chaim Kolchem Hayoim, even today in Golus, so we're alive, it's only because Atam Advekim Hashem alekechem. Like the Gemara says, is it possible to attach oneself to the Shekhinah? But it means to attach oneself to his ways, etc., to go in the ways of Hashem, which is Torah mitzvahs. Now, since a Jew is an intelligent fellow, or person of intelligence, because obligation to do mitzvahs is only page 150 now. When a person is a bar das, already mature, 13 years old in one day, so why does a Jew need all these warnings in the Torah, Teresh B'Ksav and Teresh B'Al Peh, Hishomer, be warned, pen, lest, v'al, all expressions of warning, and he even needs to be threatened, fear of punishment. He's an intelligent person. He knows surely you can't survive without attachment to Hashem. The explanation is the beginning of all of this. Of what? Of the delusion that one can exist independently of God altogether, is because he feels himself as an independent Metzius. He believes Taka because all Jews have Maminim, B'nei Maminim, that Adevishta creates the world, and he believes also that he's created B'chesed Hashem. But now that he's created, that his neshama has descended and invested in the body, the physical body, which is in the Ilma Zagashmi, and especially in a situation of Golos, then Rom, Hashem is exalted, Allah Shemaim Kavodah, his glories in the heavens. After he created the world and all that's in it, so he says, Ozav Hashem Esaoretz, Hashem has left, abandoned the world. And he's present in heaven, he does his things. Whereas V'aretz Nosan Livnei Yodam, we're quoting from Tilim here. Whereas the world, he gave it into the hands of man, that they should conduct themselves according to their own will and whim. So this is all in error. And since he's become in his own perception of Metzius, so he has his own seichel and his own cheshbon, and because this is a cheshbon of a rational cheshbon of flesh and blood, so the nature is that bribery blinds even the ones that are pikrim, the clever, the ones that eyes are open. Or the bribes even the clever and even the wise. Meaning to say, even before he accepted the bribery, he was a true chacham de pikeach. The bribery will blind his eyes, and he will make a crooked and erroneous cheshbon contrary to seichel. And there's no greater bribery than self-love. For on all pshoyim, on all transgressions, love covers. That explains. Simple bribery can work only when a person gives himself a license to compromise something that's kal, that's not serious. Especially if he's a chacham, the pikech, as the pasuk says. So, for bribery of money, or even the bribery of honor, is not going to do something which is obviously called a transgression. Pshoyim, because as the Gemara says, Pshoyim means, it means a sin that's done deliberately, in rebellion, which is intentional. That he's not going to do. However, when he mixes in the love of himself, So it's hard to bear the thought that he's going to absagen sich, he's going to turn down something of covet or taiva, etc., etc. So then Al Kol Pshoim Techasa Av. And all tribe Pshoim, even rebellion, the love covers it. The Sheikhad of the bribery of self-love, in the end, covers not only inadvertent sin, but even Pshoim, sins done deliberately, especially for every reason it might be. Something happened that he stumbled in the past, he failed in the past. And he has to effect by himself, page 151, that he should acknowledge it and abandon it. Meaning to say, even though he's a chacham, he's going to have to admit that he was wrong. The pasuk says, the one who acknowledges and leaves his sin, Yeruchim will receive compassion. That's only if he acknowledges his mistake. Then Yeruchim, that he's assured that Hashem will forgive him. So when it comes to the self-love, he doesn't want to entertain the thought that he could make such a mistake. Therefore, he has to find a reason in Seichel to justify his behavior this way or that way, even though he should have conducted himself absolutely contrary. And so a person goes from a dover kal, a somewhat light transgression, to something kosher, serious, all the way to pshoyim, elah moedim, pesha, rebellion. And as mentioned above, the cause of all this is because he feels it all starts with, he feels himself as an independent Metzias. He forgets that he's an Eved to the Eibishter. An Eved al Pidin is not a Metzias unto himself, because whatever an Eved acquires, the master acquires. And he has nothing of his own. And all that he has, including his Seichel, belongs to his Rav. And therefore, it's not Shaykh should make a personal cheshbon. But when temporarily he forgets the ear that heard it at Sinai, talking about the Eved, how he becomes an Eved. The ear that heard at Sinai, quoting from Rashi, quotes from the Gemara. At Sinai, the ear heard that Yisrael are my servants, and nonetheless he forgets, and he feels himself as a Metzias. So this is the beginning to make his personal cheshbonos, and after he mixes in the feeling in the taiva of the heart, then there's no way to know where this is going to lead him chas v'sholem. Whereas, if there won't be the possibility to entertain this metzias b'fnei atzmai, that he's independent, meaning that through this, that he realizes that he's always in the 4 cubits of the master, and in a way that the master is standing over him in a revealed way, b'chol teichif in Yiddish ben ganze Sturim. The master is there in all of his intensity. So if he has that awareness, it's not shaykh that he should be aroused by him, this thought that he is a metzias for himself. Like the example brought in Sifrei Musar, also brought in Keser Shem Tov he brings. A person who is steeped in taivas, and all of a sudden he sees a awesome lion in front of him. In a moment, all of his taivas and all of his desires and all of his wills all vanish. And his only thought is, how can he save himself from the lion? And why is that? Because when he faces the lion, he feels that this is the geya to his existence, his etzem chayis. And therefore, everything secondary becomes completely nullified. Even self-love. And his entire thought is only, how does he remain alive? And this is the difference, concluding our question, answering the question, between creatures of the sea and creatures on dry land. Because Hashem's desire is that there should be 2 kinds of creations. One category of creations that doesn't allow the possibility, page 152, to separate from their place of chayus. The moment that they separate from that, they don't have to wait 70 years or 80 years, according to Pasuk. But miyad meisim, it's a lashon of the Mishnah. And that's the fish of the ocean. That the nature from the outset of their creation is that they see and experience in a revealed way that the whole identity is bound up in metzias with the water. And if they separate from the water, that if they separate from the water, they lose their metzias. And additionally, the Eibishter wants a second category of creatures on dry land. They are given the afshodas, the possibility to choose. And the opposite. And you should choose. He himself should choose if he wants life or its opposite. Why? Because he doesn't see now the consequence of punishment. That's going to be after 70 years, or by reasons of strength, 80 years. But the end, that's at the end. The beginning is quoted in the pasuk earlier, her lips drip honey. So therefore, he has the choice, instead of to think what's going to happen in 70 years, so he has the choice to seize and grab and drink and eat, and forgets that this itself is only there because the Eibishter puts it there that you should choose, to test him if his seichel is strong enough to recognize the truth that avodah, and he stands in the 4 cubits, the daladamas of the Adam. What's the eitzah? The eitzah is immersion in the mikveh. The end of Hilchos Mikvos writes the Rambam. It's an open, revealed thing that immersion from Tumah is part of the category of Chukim. It's a decree of the pasuk. Nonetheless, it has an illusion. Just like, says the Rambam, a person who directs his heart towards purity, so as soon as he immerses, he's pure, halachically, and even though there's no change in his body, so too, one who directs his heart to pure his soul from the impurities of the nefesh, which are the thoughts of sin and deis rois, bad attitudes. The moment he's maskim, it's one of the degrees. It's a haskoma, is a resolve in his heart to separate himself from these eitzes. In the words of these the Rambam's words, and he brings himself into the waters of da'as tohir. He's pure. End of quote of Rambam. When a person immerses himself, that explains in the meya da'as tohir, the pure waters of knowledge, which is Torah, ein mayim ala Torah, then his deya, his previous attitude is bottled, and therefore he now realizes his true metzias, and he grasps the truth that he's not a true metzias, but avodah, my servants. And this is also the shear that's required in halacha for purity in mikveh, and that is ma'im shekol gufay oile behem. Literally, water, his whole body ascends in them. Lashon Gemara. The din of immersion tefillah is that his whole body has to be in the water. If there's a part of his body that's not in the me'adas hator, then it won't help his tefillah for the rest of the body. Why? Because there's still a part that feels independent, and that still allows for his own cheshbon. And since what's still out of the water, as it were, is part of his body, which is Ramachi Vodim and Shasag Yidim, so therefore, this limb that's not in the water can falsify the cheshbon of even the other parts of the body. That's why it's one entity. That's what's required, is total immersion. 153. We're going to add a diak in the lashon of the Gemara in saying how much water is required. So it's mayim shekol gufay oila behem. Water, his whole body ascends in them. Oila dafke, which is a very unusual expression. It should have said bottle behem. Water that his whole body will be immersed, nullified in. As it says in Meforshim, that the word oila means bittul. So say bittul. Or at least nichsa ben is covered in the waters. Like the pasuk says, like the water covers the ocean floor. So in the sweet, precise lashon of Chazal, they're saying that the point of the tefillah in the Mei Hadas Hatoir is that he should ascend in them. That this causes an aliyah from the impure attitudes, Mei Hadas Habilti Toir, which is the chachma, the cheshbon, the justifications in the chachma, which are impure and untrue. And so he's mevatel his previous metzias, And now he places himself in an elevated mitzias, and that's the diuk. Mayim shekol gufa eilabeh. 22. Now the mikveh is all connected. There is one theme here. This mikveh is connected with the ocean. As the Mishnah says, that all oceans have the din of a mikveh. There's even a day adds in brackets that they have a din higher than a mikveh, namely the din of a mayan. A spring is more than a collected body of water, which is a mikveh, and a spring is a greater degree of tahara, which is required for a zov and a zover. But at any rate, so there's one opinion that says all oceans have a din of a mayan, that a zov could immerse in an ocean. But at any rate, according to old days, it certainly has a din as a mikveh. Because what's a mikveh? Again, shekol gufa eilabeh, the meaning the body of the flesh and blood, a sense to feel, not just his own physicality, his own flesh and blood, but he feels that there's a dvar Hashem, the word of Hashem. That not only that Hashem created him the moment he was born, but in such bad, moreover, Hashem renews in his goodness every day, continuously, his existence. That every moment he's getting his chayes from the Eibishter, and he cannot be separate from him, because he is his chayes at every moment and every place. And this is the aliyah that is affected through mikveh. That his whole immersed, his whole identity is only dveikus, connection to Hashem, and therefore, chayim kulchem hayom, he's truly alive. And this is the ocean. And all the again, according to the Mishnah again, all oceans have a din of a mikveh. What do we see in the ocean? That even though there are creatures in the ocean, and the creatures would appear have their own mitzias, but there is the water, because there's the water, and in addition there's the mitzias of the fish, of the oceanic creatures. Nonetheless, these creatures are there in such a way that they cannot separate from the source of life. So that I'm saying, you're not saying you don't exist. You exist, but your existence is because you're bound up with Hashem. What does this mean in the Avodah of every Yid, chapter 23? In the words of the Mishnah, then the Masechta Yoma, says the Mishnah, fortunate are you, Ashreichem Yisrael, fortunate are you Yidden, before whom are you purified, and who purifies you? Who is it? Avichem Shabashamayim, your Father in heaven, Shedemar, as the pasuk says in Yechezkel, I will pour upon you pure waters, and you'll be pure. The pasuk says, Mikvi Sol Hashem, the hope of Israel is God, but the word hope also is the word mikveh. So the Mishnah says that just like a mikveh purifies the impure, so too they wish to purify Sidon. And what is all this? It's tshuva. There's nothing that stands in the way of tshuva, meaning that just like the mikveh purifies, so too tshuva purifies. 154. That since we put our hope and trust in Hashem, Kavim Elov, our hope is in Him, which is the simple meaning of the words Mikvi Sol Hashem. Hashem is the hope of Israel. Lashon Tikva, hope. And we're connecting to Him, then He purifies us from all sin and iniquity. And this is the lesson we learn from the days of Purim for the whole year. Even when the Haman within us, within you, the Yetzer Hara, throws in him a machshava, a thought, as the Haman said, he thought to destroy the Yidden, meaning to say, Chashav ala Yehudim, says the pasuk. What does Yetzer Hara want? He wants to destroy the Yehudi within the Jew. What's a Yehudi? Yehudi is someone who denies Avodah Zarah, acknowledges Hashem. He wants to destroy that shouldn't be recognized, that he denies Avodah Zarah and acknowledges the God of Israel. In the words, in the language of the Moshel brought in the previous Sichah, that a Haman wants to take from the water and pour it in the dry land, as we explained. So instead of all of this, Yoshu Machshavtei Hara, he withdraws from his evil thought. And what's the end? Kimu v'kibla Yehudim aleim, the Yidden affirmed their commitment as it was then, that even those who benefited from the suda of that wicked one, they returned in tshuva, and they were saved from that gzeira. As the pasuk says, v'napich, was all transformed, always transformed one extreme to the other. Likewise, in the Melchama that Hashem has in Amalek, which Haman is from his descendants. It's midoir doir, it's perpetual. And we pearl the teikvishal ness, the intensity, the full strength of the ness for them in this time of Purim and the children. There'll be a maimed that what will be, it'll be oid of a simcha of a sas and vikar, even literally matam asar tvachim all the way down in our physical world. Next Sichot, chapter 24. To say l'chaim in between. In light of the above, we'll understand something which would appear is not understood at all. And that is, with respect to the name of Yom Tov, the Megillah says, and therefore they call these days Purim because of the Pur. As the pasuk says, Pur means Geirah, lottery. They called it Purim. But lottery is in Lashon HaKodesh, whereas Pur is in Paras Amadai. It's the language of, it's Persian, Mede. So lottery in Persian, and in the language of the Medes is Pur. The question is, the Megillah is written in Lashon HaKodesh. How much more so? So the name of the Yom to be in Lashon HaKodesh, which should be called Geiroles, lotteries, not Purim, which is plural for Pur. Furthermore, why is it called Purim in the plural? It's Hashem HaPur, the lottery which Haman threw. So the Yom should have been called Pur or Geirol in the singular, not plural. Right? So two questions. And therefore, the Rabbi says, I found in a Maimah that's in Tzemach Tzedek that was said later by the Rebbe Marash with greater elaboration. And there he explains why is it called Purim in the plural, even though the pasuk says itself that it's called so because of the Pur, the lottery in the singular. In light of the answer that the Tzemach Tzedek gives on that answer, we'll also understand why it's not in Hebrew, but in Lashon Parsi, not in Lashon HaKodesh. Tzemach Tzedek brings from a Maimah of the Alter Rebbe, and here's a quote from the Alter Rebbe. The Emma says there's two lotteries. Because what's a Geirol? A Geirol is something which a person cannot, when a person cannot discern intellectually which option to choose, so he relies on the Geirol and the way it's going to fall. So too, everybody has to cast lots. He has to know in his soul that he cannot grasp with his seichel. And therefore he has to rely on the lottery. And what's the lottery? Emunah, faith which is beyond seichel. End quote. Next quote continues to explain there that emunah is called lottery. Like the pasuk says, Ata toimach geiroli. You, Eibishter, you support my lot, my lottery, because it's higher than seichel. So conclusion, the union of geirol, again, when does a person use a geirol? When the intellect can't figure out which option is better, so he relies on the geirol and the lottery. So it's the union of emunah higher than seichel. Continues the Alter Rebbe. Likewise in Klippe, there's bad midas that's not api seichel. There's a conduct which is not api seichel, lower than seichel, and that's the girdle of Haman, which counteracts the girdle which is beyond seichel, and that's why it's called Purim, two lotteries, because there's oimik toiv, oimik ra. There's the depth of good which is higher than seichel, and the depth of evil which is lower than seichel. However, through revealing the attributes of holiness that are above seichel, oimik toiv, this neutralizes the oimik ra, the deep evil, the deep ra. And that is, still quoting here from the Alter Rebbe, the two lotteries of Purim. This is similar to what the Gemara says, the Medrash says, I'm sorry, on the words, and Hashem saw all that he made it, and it's toiv ma'oid, that's the end of the Sheishis Me'Bereishis. What's the toiv ma'oid? That's the Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara is toiv ma'oid. Yeah, because when you turn the Yetzer Hara into good, it's not stam good, but toiv ma'oid. End the quote of the Alter Rebbe. Now the Rebbe elaborates in chapter 26. The reason the Yom Tov is called Purim in the plural is because there was the Pur of Haman, Hipil Pur, Hu HaGeirol, he threw the lottery. And above two, there was aroused the girdle of Yidden. That's the transcendent girdle. Again, about which the pasuk says, "Ata you Eibishter Toimach Geroli, support my lottery," meaning that Eibishter protects the Yidden and saves them, notwithstanding their situation, and he does in a way of Gerol, which is not connected to logic. Understand this by prefacing the difference. When a person will use a girdle or not use a girdle, in general, when a person wants to do something, he thinks about it with his intellect, how much he needs it, how much it's worth, how much he has to pay for it. But when you make a decision based on a girdle, in the bechek yutolas a girdle, bechek means in the chest, the girdle is made, and from Hashem is mishpotoi. God decides the outcome. And there's no room for mixing in seichel. You put the girdle in the kalpi is the box, so you put it as a word for it. And what falls from the girdle, then you cast it out, or you take the token. So that's what belongs to him, without difference whether the seichel agrees or not. Page 156. Likewise in our case, when Yidden in a situation of limdat Torah and kima mitzvahs, so then it's understood up his seichel that Eibishter will protect them and save them and from all of their sorrow, because Hashem promised, when you keep my keep my mitzvahs, then you'll have the rain in its right time, and all the brachas that are outlined in the parsha of the second parsha of the Shema. But sometimes this is Maimon the Matzev, that Haman comes along and takes from the water, from the ocean, and he pours it in the dry land. That the Yidden are separate from their place of chayes because of the seduction of the Yetzer Hara, the Haman within. And in such a situation, so if a person is going to rely on his seichel, so then comes the mid of din and says, seichel, they serve idols, you serve idols. What's the difference between you and the others? So therefore, why should we stand at your right hand to save you? In Yiddish, why would heaven defend the Yid if it's all based on rationale? Where is the Yid now? He's not in his place of chayis. He's on the bushes in the dry land, not in his place of chayis. And this, the answer is, Ata toimich geiroli. You the Eibishter to support me on the level of geirol. Connection between Yidden and the Eibishter is not only when they do Torah mitzvahs, but rather, like the Rebbe concludes in the Geras HaKodesh, our connection in Tanya is higher than Das. It's a level of Geirol Mamash. That's the words of the Alter Rebbe. And the Rebbe says the diak Geirol Mamash. What's the word Mamash? Mamash is applied to something you can touch with your hands. That's what the word Mamash and Mishush, which means to feel, the same root. So the meaning is that the Geirol is not only this essence of the neshama, but it comes down and brings Hashem's protection for our physical bodies. But it's drawn down into the sense of touch, the mamish of the physical body of a Yid, as he is in this time. For the decree of Haman was on the body, and the salvation of the body was because why? Ata toimach giroli, coming from the Eibush to the level of Geirol, which is higher, the Geirol above, higher than rationale. And that's why, even though the Yom Tov is called Pur Hura Geirol in the singular, but the meaning is that there were two Geirolos. One, the Geirol of Haman. He pulled Pur Hura Geirol Lifnei Haman. He wanted to exploit this level of Geirol. And the second Geirol Shalamayla, which is you, Ata Tomer Giroli, that's the Geirol of the Eibishter Yidden, and therefore it's called Purim in the plural, two levels of Purim. But still,
interesting to note that the mimer that we learned together in concerning these two concepts of Geirol and Tomer Giroli. Tomer Giroli is higher. It's Bechiris Atzmos.
He's hinting to it. He's not spelling it out, but he's referring to it.
But it comes from our from
He
our
says in Maimed, it's
textbook.
Tafshir Gimel. He says in Maimed there's two levels in Geidel. And the higher level is the Atatemich Geidel. It's still part of the Geidel level. Yeah, chapter 27. But in light of the above, the question is even greater. Since these days are called Purim Lashon Rabim, because there were two Geidelos, the Geidel of Haman Lahavdil, the Geidel of the Eibishter, or of Yidden, it's one. So surely we should call these days Geidel in the singular to focus on the Eibishter's Geidel, not on Haman's Geidel. The answer is that this is precisely the point. We said before, bringing from the Tzemach Tzedek, the two Geidelos, Purim Lashon Rabim, they're the two in Yonim of Toiv, Stam, and Toiv Ma'oid. That's how it concluded. Very good. About which Chazal said, quoted earlier, that's the Yetzer Hara. And the reason, because at Opia, how can you say the Yetzer Hara is Toiv Ma'oid? Because when he's transformed to good, he's not Stam good, but Toiv Ma'oid. The Madreg of the Tzaddik, the Tzaddik Mikara means someone born a Tzaddik and stays the course. So this is a very high level in Kedusha. Bali Tshuva is even higher. Like the Rambam explains why. Because this Bal Tshuva has tasted sin and he is separated from it and he's conquered his Yetzer Hara. So this is greater than the one who never sinned, because the one who does has to conquer his Yetzer Hara much more than them. Meaning, end of quote. The tzaddik, it's possible he never faced a test. And if he would, we don't know what, if it would be a great test. And you know, even if he did, we don't know if it was a great test. A test that really tested his koiches. Whereas someone who sinned and transgressed, so obviously he faced a great test, much more than his koiches, the raya, because he didn't withstand it. And he transgressed. So now when he does tshuva, this is a true tshuva. Tshuva gedoy, tshuva shleima, tshuva gedoyla, tshuva ilah. A supernal tshuva. And therefore he's elevated to a place that even tzaddikim gemurim einyan yechelim lamed by. And this is what we said before in Siftes. That the possibility that there should be a pur of Haman is because the Jew gives him such a place in his own soul, to the foreign God and is within him, the Yetzer Hara, and benefits and enjoys the sud of Oisei Rasha. That's what allows Haman to exist. So it comes out that by every Jew, there's two levels of pur within us. There's the pur of the Yetzer Hara and the pur, the lot of the Yetzer Tov. And there's two kinds of victory. There's a victory, the way of Geirol, that's Avodah the Tzaddik. In the singular, he stayed the course. He never got involved with the Yetzer Hara with Haman. And then there's the pur that is the pur as a result of the Yetzer Hara being transformed to good. So we transform the pur of the opposite pur of Haman, and we make it the pur of Kedusha. Clear? 28. In fact, we finish the Sichot. Anyway, it's today's.
Yeah, finish it.
Yeah,
Finish it. Then we'll start after the month.
Yeah, Purim. The pasuk says, "Kilu v'kim la Yehudim aleim v'alzarim." The Alter Rebbe explains in Torah that Yidden merited, page 158, to the level of Mesiras Nefesh on Kiddush Hashem, famous Alter Rebbe. For if they wanted to deny their faith, Haman would have done nothing to them because the decree was only on Yidden. But they were Mesiras Nefesh for a whole year. They didn't enter a machsheves chutz, a foreign thought, chas v'shalom, even one of them. Meaning they faced a great test, the greatest test. And they faced it with it, and the test which was the greatest, the difficulty. And nonetheless, they faced it with, they stood in the way of tshuva till Mesiras Nefesh. And therefore it's called, answering the question, not Geirolis Lashon HaKodesh, because that's the Darga of Tzadikim Gemurim, but Purim in the language of the nations of the world, because this is Shaykh to the Umas Ha'olam and all physical material matters which the Yetzer Hara has a connection to. And nonetheless, we transform that to Kedusha, and we make it Yemei Purim, Yom Tov by Eden. a Yom Tov Yidden, which is bound up with many mitzvahs, including the mitzvah of Adel Yoda, higher than Cheshbon, which is the whole point of Geirel, higher than Tam V'das, in the words of the Alter Rebbe, B'chinas HaGeirel Mamash, as it's drawn down in Mamoshes and connected with wine Gashmis and a Guf Gashmi, through which we fulfill the mitzvah of Chaim V'inish B'puri Adel Yoda. And for the days of Purim, these days of Purim, we draw on it. We draw these days of Purim into all of the days that will follow, and that we affect. Ata Tomer Giroli, you support my Girdle in a revealed way, that their king will come at their head, Yovim Malcolm Beroisha, Mashiach, and take us out of Akata Avdid Achashverosh, and we're still servants of Achashverosh, even post Purim, and bring us to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, Al Yedei Mashiach Tzidkeinu Bekorev Mamish. And then the Maimah that we learned. So, Hashgacha Pratis, we're going to continue tomorrow. Be'ez Hashem. You guys are up for it? Why not?